I said. And just right from the start, JP, what is consciousness, right? Because it's this experience that we're in every waking moment, and it's so obvious to us that it's not obvious, right? So if you could just break it down, what a consciousness
Sure,
is.
sure. There are three ways to do that. The basic way is to give it what's called an ostensive definition. And that means to define it by pointing to examples of it. Now, the reason you have to do that is that sometimes one thing like bachelor can be defined in terms of something else, unmarried male. Water can be defined in terms of hydrogen and two oxygens. So you can do that if the thing you're defining isn't basic and fundamental. That is, you can define it in terms of other things that are more basic. Like water is not basic because it's built up out of more basic things, hydrogen and oxygen. But eventually you reach a place where you can't keep going on a vicious infinite regress. So you have to stop with things that are primitive or basic, and consciousness is that sort of thing. There's nothing more fundamental in terms of which you could define it. And so the only thing you can do at that point is just point to examples. So the first way to do this is to say, well, consciousness would be when you have certain states like sensations or emotions or thoughts or beliefs or desires, or when you exercise free choice. So that's number one. Consciousness is states like this. The second way would be to say that for every state of consciousness C, there is a what it is like to be in C. So there is a what it is like to be in a pain state, or a tasting of cherry pie state, or in a fearing or anger state, or a thinking that snow is white. That's different than thinking that George Washington was there. So there's always a what it is like to that state, but nothing physical has that. No electron, negative charge doesn't. There's no what it's like to be negative charge. So that's the second way. The third way to define consciousness would be to say that some state is a state of consciousness, just in case the subject has private access to that state. And what that means is that for every physical object or every physical property, like being 8 feet tall or having such and such mass, or any state of a physical object, like being in a state of 32 degrees Fahrenheit. All of those, everything physical is accessible publicly. Every way I have of knowing about anything physical is available to everybody else with the right training. But I have a way of knowing about my conscious states that's not available to anybody else, and that is through private introspection. So consciousness is a certain sort of thing to which the subject has first-person private access to it, but that's not true of his brain or a brain state or anything like that. So 3 ways: ostensive pointing, there's a what it's like to consciousness, and we have private access to conscious states and only conscious states.
Right, like this intentionality.
Yeah, exactly.
That physical objects, they don't have that. They're
right.
completely devoid of that.
That's
okay.
Absolutely right.